Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding Mishnah Berurah Chelik Aleph. We are continuing to learn Hilchos Krias Shema. We pick up today on Daf Tzadik Ches Amud Beis with a new Siman Samach Hey. Hanichnas lebeis hakneses, the halachah of one who comes into the Beis Hakneses, he comes to shul. Umatza tzibur kairin Krias Shema, and he comes in late, and the tzibur is already up to Krias Shema. Oy shehifsik b'shas hakriya. Also, and this is really what we're going to discuss first, the halachah of one who interrupts his Krias Shema, or we're going to see the recital of the Birchas Krias Shema, ubay gimel seifim, and here we have 3 seifim. Says the Mechaber Sif Aleph, Kira'a Serugin, if you recite Krias Shema with interruptions. And we're going to see that we're not just discussing the recitation of Krias Shema itself, we're also discussing the recitation of the Birchas Krias Shema. So, Kira'a Serugin, if you recite the brachas of Krias Shema or Krias Shema itself with interruptions. What does that mean? Explains the Mechaber, Dahainu, Shehischel Likrois, you begin to recite the Birchas Krias Shema or Krias Shema itself, Vehifsik, and then you interrupt your recitation of Krias Shema, Bein Bishtika, whether your interruption is just a pause of silence, Bein B'dibur, or if you actually interrupt your recitation of Krias Shema or Birchas Krias Shema with dibur, you make a hefsik, a real classic hefsik, you speak. So you're in the middle of saying Birchas Krias Shema, or you're in the middle of Krias Shema, and you start to have a conversation with somebody. So a real bona fide hefsik. And then the chazar ugemara, and then you return to the place that you were up to, and you continue your recitation of Krias Shema, and you complete it. So let's say, for example, somebody's in the middle of Krias Shema, he's in the middle of davening Shachris, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, Baruch Shem Kved Baruch Yisrael Olam V'ed, V'afta Yis Hashem Elokecha B'chol Lavavecha V'chol Nafshecha U'V'chol Ma'idecha. Yeah, so what's doing? How's everything? What's going on? Yeah, really? Yeah, very interesting. Okay, yeah, I'll speak to you later. V'hayu advarim ha'ela asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha. Now, certainly, what this person is doing is forbidden. It's definitely usher to do this. Nevertheless, this is what the person did, and he completed Krias Shema. So he did, in fact, recite the entire Krias Shema, but he did it with an interruption. Says the Mechaber, Afilu shaha kidei ligmar es kula. Even if the hefsik, the interruption, was long enough, it was the amount of time during which really you could recite the entire Krias Shema, or you could recite the entire Birchas Krias Shema with Krias Shema. So let's say it takes somebody 3 minutes to say Krias Shema. So he starts to have a conversation with somebody in the middle of the ahavta, or he doesn't start to have a conversation, he's mafsik bishtika. In the middle of the ahavta, he takes out a chumash and he's learning. He's learning Rashi. And he doesn't speak, he doesn't say the words, but he's mafsik bishtika. He has a pause in the middle of his Krias Shema that's 3 minutes long. So he paused a long enough amount of time that he could have recited the entire Krias Shema during that amount of time. Still in all, says the Mechaber, yotza. He's still yotza. This is improper, but he's yotza. And the Mechaber says, afilu haya hahefsik machmas oines. And according to the Shitas HaMechaber, this is true even if the reason for his hefsik was not that he decided to make a hefsik. He had an oines. There was something that forced him to make a hefsik. For example, let's say he had to go to the Beis HaKisei. So that's an oines. He had no choice. He had to go to the Beis HaKisei. He was out in the Beis HaKisei for 5 minutes, and now he came back. So he had a hefsik that was machmas oines, and it was a long enough amount of time that he could have recited the entire Krias Shema, but now he came back after his hefsik, and he completed his Krias Shema. According to the Shitas HaMechaber, he is yoitza. Now, what's the chiddush of afilu machmas oinus? Why is that a chiddush, right? The Mechaber says, even if the hefsek was machmas oines, it's still not considered a hefsek, and he's still yoitza. What's the added chiddush of the fact that it was machmas oines? So the chiddush is that when a hefsek is machmas oines, you have no way of ending the hefsek. The hefsek is going to go on for as long as it goes on. It's not biyodcha, it's not in your hands. It's out of your control. Masha ein kain, if a hefsek is not machmas oines, if a hefsek is under your control, so you can end it whenever you want. A hefsek that's out of your control is usually considered a greater hefsek. It's a greater level of hefsek. Now, even in that, we're going to see in the Mishnah Berurah that when we discuss a hefsek machmas oines, there are different types of hefsek machmas oines. We'll see that in the Mishnah Berurah. But one thing that we see from the Mechaber is telling us a halachah that even though you had interruptions in your Krias Shema, you had interruptions in your recitation of Birchas Krias Shema, and even if there were significant interruptions, they were so long that you could have recited the entire Birchas Krias Shema or the entire Krias Shema during the length of that interruption, still in all, according to the Shita Mechaber, you are yoitza. That hefsek is not considered significant enough that it should break your recitation of Krias Shema and have it be considered an invalid recitation. No, you still are yoitza. Let's see the Mishnah Berurah's Katan Aleph. Bein bedibur, in the Shita Mechaber, the Mechaber says, this is true even if you are mafsik bedibur, even if you interrupted your recitation of Krias Shema with speech, you spoke in the middle. Afilu imsach b'mezid, says the Chavetz Chaim, this is true even if you spoke out b'mezid, you did it intentionally, you started a conversation with somebody. After asa iser bazeh, certainly this is aser, certainly you're not allowed to do this. Afal pikein ein tzarich lachzar, you do not have to go back, let's say, to the beginning of Krias Shema, or to the beginning of Birchas Krias Shema, rak l'makom shepasak. You just have to continue from where you left off. Va'afilu kishepasak be'emtza bracha. And this is true even if you are mafsik in the middle of a bracha. So let's say the Birchas Krias Shema. The first bracha of Birchas Krias Shema begins with the bracha of Yotzer Or. So you said, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, Yotzer Or v'arechosha chesed shalom u'varis hakoil. Hameir l'Aretz v'Adam l'Berach, Hameir move to Mechash v'Chayim Tamin Rasi Bereshis. Now you went ahead and you started a conversation with somebody, and you had a 3-minute conversation with somebody. And then you go ahead and you pick up where you left off and you continue. Now you are mafsik in the middle of a bracha. The first bracha of Birchas Krias Shema begins with Yotzer Or v'arechosha chesed shalom u'varis hakoil. And then it ends, Baruch atah Hashem Yotzer ha'ma'oros, at the end of Lakel Baruch Ni'imos Yitenu. So you are mafsik in the middle of a bracha. Still in all, says the Chavetz Chaim, according to the Shita Mechaber, afilu kishapasak be'emtza bracha, even if you made a hefsek in the midst of one of the brachas of Birchas Krias Shema, you just have to go back to where you left off, and you're okay, and you're yotzim. V'hu adin, the same halachah applies, says the Chavetz Chaim, Kishasach be'emtza Hallel, if somebody speaks out in the middle of Hallel, Megillah, or in the middle of listening to Megillas Esther, Birchas Hamazon, or in the middle of benching, Sha'ar bracha aruka, or any other bracha arucha, any other long bracha. What's a long bracha? A long bracha is like the bracha of Birchas Krias Shema. It starts, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, Yotzer Or v'arechosha chesed shalom u'varis hakoil. So it has a psicha with Shem u'malchus, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. And then at the end it has a chasima with Baruch atah Hashem Yotzer ha'ma'oros. And the middle is a lengthy recitation of the praises of Hashem Yisparach. That's called a bracha arucha. If you're mafsik in the middle of a bracha arucha, even with speech, you do not lose the bracha. You just have to continue from where you left off. Masha ein kain by a bracha kitzara, a short bracha, like Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, she'akol niya b'dvarei. If you're mafsik in the middle of a bracha kitzara, you lose the bracha. Because where are you going to be mafsik? If you say Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, and now you're mafsik, then the end of the bracha, she'akol niya b'dvarei, is no longer connected to the Shemu Malchus. So you can't be mafsik in the middle of a bracha kitzara. But in the middle of a bracha arucha, especially according to the Shita Samachaber over here, you could be mafsik. Not could, it's usher. But you don't lose the bracha if you did. Continues the Chavetz Chaim. V'davka kishu oimran ba'atzmai. However, this is only true if you are reciting the bracha and you're being yoitzer with your own recitation. Dim shemei my achar shemaytzioi, and contrast this to if somebody else is reciting the bracha and he's being moitzi you, so you're listening to his recitation and you're going to say amen, and he has kavanah to be moitzi you, and you have kavanah to be yoitzi, v'hu sach bein tayim, and you start carrying on a conversation while the person is being moitzi you is reciting the bracha, memela eina shemeya, then you're not yoitzi because he's saying things and you're not listening. So there's no shemeya ka'ina, so now you're actually losing words. So that doesn't work. How could you possibly be yotza? And the Chavetz Chaim says we will explain in greater detail. He mentioned over here Hallel, Megillah, Birchas Hamazon. He says we'll discuss each one in its proper place. He does say in the Bir Halacha that when it comes to Krias Shema, if you are mafsik b'dibur b'mezid, if you interrupted your recitation of Krias Shema with speech and you did it b'mezid, then it is proper sheyachzar parshiyos oidapam. You should repeat the parshiyos of Krias Shema ki yesh omrim detzarich lachzor l'rosh, because there are those shittas that argue on the mechaber and say that you do have to go back to the beginning. Okay, so far we have seen the shittas mechaber. Now let's go to the shita of the Ramah. Says the Ramah, V'yesh omrim, but there are those that say, De'ima haya onus, if you were an oines, if you were forced by circumstances to make this hefsek that you made, V'yesh omrim dim haya onus v'hifsek, and you made an interruption in your Krias Shema or in your Birchas Krias Shema, Kedei ligmar eskula, that's long enough that during the length of time of that hefsek, you could have completed the entire Krias Shema, or in the case of an interruption in your Birchas Krias Shema, you could have completed the entire Birchas Krias Shema with Krias Shema, then chayzel rosh. There are those that say that, again, if the hefsek was machmas oines, if you were forced to make this hefsek by an oines, and if the hefsek was of very significant length, kedei ligmar skula, then you have to go back to the beginning, chayzel rosh, and the Ramah says v'hachi nahug, and that is how we are noyig. Now, there's a lot here in these words in the Ramah that we're going to have to see in the Mishnah Berurah what this really means. What does machmas oines mean? What does kedei ligmar skula mean? What does chayzel rosh mean? Go back to where? To which point? V'hachi nog, and the Ramah says this is how we're noig. One last point in the Ramah before we see the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Ramah, when we talk about a hefsek that's kedei ligmar eskula, long enough that you could have finished the entire recitation during that amount of time. How do we measure? By whose speed? By the tzibur's speed? By the chazan's speed? By your speed? By whose speed? Says the Ramah, U'misharin inyan ha'she'iyah, we measure the length of this pause, lefia koirei, in accordance with the reading of the one who has the shaila. V'loy lefi roiv b'nei adam. We don't go by roiv b'nei adam. I happen to know that my Krias Shema takes pretty much 3 minutes. I know that because I want to know when I'm davening v'sikin, I want to know what time I need to reach Krias Shema and have enough time to say Krias Shema to finish Birchas Krias Shema and be up to Shemona Esrei by nets. So I know that I need approximately 4.5 minutes to nets. I need 3 minutes for Krias Shema and 1.5 minutes for Birchas Krias Shema until I get to Shemona Esrei. So for me, Kedei Ligmaris Kula of Krias Shema is 3 minutes. I'm sure there are a lot of people who say Krias Shema faster than me. I'm sure there are some people who say Krias Shema slower than me. So we measure by each person according to his Kriya. Now let's dive into the Mishnah Berurah, and we're going to try to do most of, at least a nice piece of the Mishnah Berurah that is on Tzadik Tes Amud Aleph as well. So let's dive in on Tzadik Tes Amud Beis. Mishnah Berurah is cut in Beis. V'yeshayimrim. So the Ramah said we have this yeshayimrim that says it depends on the hefsek. The Mechaber said it doesn't matter. The Mechaber said if you have a hefsek in your Krias Shema or in your Birchas Krias Shema, it doesn't matter what the reason of the hefsek is. It doesn't matter if you did it intentionally or it was machmas oines or for whatever reason, and you are mafsek, and even if the hefsek was very long, kedei ligmar kula, it doesn't matter, you're yoitza. That was the shita of Samachaber. Said the Ramah that there's a yeshayrim that says that it depends. Why were you mafsek? If the hefsek was machmas oines and it was significant, it was kedei ligmar kula, then that's a significant hefsek, and you're not yoitza. So you have to go back to the beginning. Okay, says the Mishnah Berurah is cut in Beis. Time up. What is the rationale of this shita? Explains the Chofetz Chaim. If the interruption was not due to an oinus, so that the hefsek was under control of the reader, if he wanted to continue his Krias Shema, he could. It's completely in his hands. Then this shita holds that hefsek is not considered a hefsek because it's not a forced interruption. It's not an interruption that must continue for an indeterminate amount of time. We don't know how long. This person can end the hefsek whenever he wants. So therefore, it's not a significant hefsek. But if it's an oinus, so it's out of the person's control, chashiva hashiyah hefsek, now the pause constitutes a hefsek, kevan shaloyaya oz yachai likros. You see, here's the critical difference, at least according to the way the Mishnah Berurah explains it. According to the way the Mishnah Berurah explains it, if you have a hefsek machmas oines, so then it's out of your control. So at this moment, when you're in middle of the hefsek, you cannot say Krias Shema. You have reached a point where you cannot continue your Krias Shema. That's a very significant hefsek. It's totally out of your control. You can't continue even if you want to. So that's a real break. That's a real hefsek. Masha Einkein, if it's under your control, so it's not that you reached a point in time where you cannot say Krias Shema. If you want to, you can continue saying Krias Shema right now. That does not constitute a significant enough break to make a hefsek and say that you're not yoitza. That's the rationale of this shita brought down by the Ramah. V'ayin b'Magen Avram, and the Chofetz Chaim says, take a look at the Magen Avram in Sif Cotton Beis. Shemasiku concludes that dafke ima oinus hu machmas sheha'ish einoi ro'i. See, this is what I was telling you. We're going to see in the Mishnah Berurah that even when we speak about a hefsek machmas oines, there are different types of hefsek machmas oines. The Magen Avram says, what does the Ramah mean when he says that a hefsek machmas oines is a significant hefsek? Depends what the oines is. He says it means an oines that makes the person not roi to continue saying Krias Shema. Kagoin shehutzrach l'nikavav. For example, he can't say Krias Shema because he needs to use the facilities. So right now it's usher for him to say Krias Shema. So he can't say Krias Shema. Or another case, Shahamakim einoi roi. The place where he is became a place where you're not allowed to say Krias Shema. Kigoin shamata sham tsaya imer raglayim. A person was in the middle of saying Krias Shema, and a baby with a soiled diaper, and maybe he's leaking and he smells, and suddenly the makom became not roi. I can't continue saying Krias Shema because the makom is not roi. There's tzoya here. I can't say Krias Shema. So now I'm stuck. I can't say Krias Shema until they take the baby out. Aval oines acher, but a different type of oines. Kigoin, for example, machmas listim. You can't say Krias Shema because you were in the middle of saying Krias Shema. Now chas v'chalila, somebody came in with a gun and pointed a gun at your head and said, "Stop saying Krias Shema." So it's an oines. It's out of your control. You can't say Krias Shema. But it's not because halachically you're not roy to say Krias Shema. It's because there's something that is making you decide, I am going to stop saying Krias Shema. Now, you're right for making that decision. Somebody's pointing a gun at your head. So you're right for making that decision. But it is a decision. It's not that you are halachically forced not to say Krias Shema. It's you're making a decision that you cannot say Krias Shema. Ukahai gavna, in such cases, says the Magen Avram, heavy kamoisha shasak beratzain, that is considered as if you're making a pause by your own decision. And according to this day of the Ramah, that is not called a hefsek. So says the Magen Avram. And this distinction is only true by Krias Shema and Birchas Krias Shema, and like the other things we mentioned above, Megillah, Birchas Hamazon, Aval B'Tfilah, Chayzel L'Rosh Afilu B'Oines Acher. But if it's a question of interrupting in the middle of Shemoneh Esrei, then you would have to go back to the beginning of the Shemoneh Esrei, even for this type of oinus. So Hayoytze Midvarenu. Hayoytze from Mishnah Berurah Ois Cotton Bays. We have a Ramah. The Ramah says that there's a Yesh Oimrim that says that if you have a hefsek machmas oines, and that hefsek is of a significant amount of time, k'dei ligmar is kula, that makes a significant hefsek, and now you got to go back to the beginning, and you're not yoytze. The Mishnah Berurah explains what's the reason for this distinction. Why is it that an oines machmas, that a hefsek machmas oines is worse? Explain the Mishnah Berurah, because a hefsek machmas oines means you reached a time where it is impossible for you to say Krias Shema. That makes a significant hefsek. Says the Magen Avram, this is only true if it's a hefsek machmas oines of halachah. You are not roy to say Krias Shema because you need the facilities. The makom is not roy to say Krias Shema because there's tzaya there. Okay. Ois Cotton Gimel. What's a significant hefsek? How long? Kedei ligmar, the amount of time it would take for you to recite the entire thing. Says the Mishnah Berurah, what does that mean? Hainu me roish v'atzoif, from the beginning to the end, afilu aymin b'soif. In other words, when we talk about kedei ligmar is kula in terms of Birchas Krias Shema, so let's say you're holding by Shira Chadasha, right before Shemoneh Esrei. Shir Chadasha Shimchol Gulul Shimchagol Sfasi Yom Yachid Kol Haydu V'Blich V'Yamar Hashem Yimloich Leilam Void. How long would it take you to say from there until Baruch Atah Hashem Gal Yisrael? 20 seconds. That's not what Kedei Ligmar's Kula means. Kedei Ligmar's Kula means the amount of time it takes to recite the whole thing from Baruch Atah Hashem Kelam Melech HaOlam Yotzer Oyer V'Arechayshach Yisrael Shalom V'Vares HaKoil all the way through to Baruch Atah Hashem Gal Yisrael. It doesn't mean to finish from where you are to the end. It means to recite the whole thing from beginning to end. Ois Cotton Dalet. According to this Yesh Oimrim in the Ramah, Chayzer, you got to go back to the beginning. First, says the Mishnah Berurah, first you should know, Kol Zel Inyan Di'evet. We're talking over here about B'di'evet. Aval Lechatchila, when we say that, this Yesh Oimrim in the Ramah says that you only have to go back to the beginning if you had a hefsek machmas oines. But if it wasn't a hefsek machmas oines, then you're yoitza. And we have the Mechaber who says that you're yoitza even if it's a hefsek machmas oines. Says the Mishnah Berurah, you should know kol zeh leaning to Yevet. Aval lechatchila, going to Tzadik Tesam and Aleph in the Mishnah Berurah. Aval lechatchila lo yafsek lishais kidei ligmar kula afilu shaloi machmas oines. Lechatchila, you should never make such a hefsek. You should never make a significant hefsek kidei ligmar is kula in your Krias Shema or in your Birchas Krias Shema. Even if it's not because of an oines. Vafilu b'shtika b'alma. Even if it's only a pause in silence. Like I said, you want to chazer the daf. Now it's not time to chazer the daf. In the middle of Birchas Krias Shema or in the middle of Krias Shema. Vafilu b'davar shu midrabanan. And this is true even by something which is only a derabanan. Ki goy Birchas Krias Shema v'halel u'megillah u'kai gavna. V'choshkein de betfila, certainly by Shemoneh Esrei, yesh lizar ma'oid bazer. We should be very, very careful by Shemoneh Esrei not to make an unnecessary hefsek, even b'shtika. Ki yesh machmirin betfila afilu b'di'eved, because there are those shitas that are machmer by Shemoneh Esrei, even b'di'eved, you're not yoitza. Umashba b'divrei HaMagid Avram, it's implied by the Magid Avram, the lechatchila nachon lizayer, that lechatchila, it would be proper to take care that the shliach tzibur should not do any lengthy cantorial performances in middle of Birchas Krias Shema. I remember in the years gone by, going with my grandfather, Oliver Shalom, to hear a chazan. So sometimes the chazan would do a lakel baruch ni'imais yitenu. That was a favorite piece of some of the chazanim. They would sing lakel baruch, and it could be very long. Now, the shliach tzibur, the chazan, he's davening. But the tzibur is b'shtika. The tzibur is just listening. So for them, it's a hefsek. Now, if the chazan does a real, cantorial rendition of lakel baruch ni'imais yitenu, let's say it takes 4 minutes. For a lot of people, 4, 5, 6 minutes is kidei ligmar skula. So everybody in the tzibur is having a hefsek while the chazan is carrying on and performing. So says the Mishnah Berurah, lechatchila nachal lizar shelo yinagen shliach tzibur harbe beberchas Krias Shema sheyeh behefsek echad kidei ligmar kula, where you'll have one long pause that is kidei ligmar skula. Sha'az yitztakla kol lahafsek harbe b'shtika yadai. Now they're having a long shtika. Now, again, according to the Mechaber, Yayoitza. Even according to the Ramah, this is not a shtika, this is not a hefsek al yidei oines. Certainly, according to the Magid Avram and his cotton bays, this is not a hefsek al yidei oines, right? But it is a hefsek, and lechatchila, we're not supposed to have a hefsek. Shalai yarichu az hakol b'amiras hatachanunim, I skipped. Now, in the brackets over here, the Mishnah Berurah says something very interesting. Venerally, he says it appears to me, the cholshkein, certainly the yesh lizara beberchas kaihanim shahum daraisa. Birchas kaihanim, Rabbi Isai, is a daraisa. Duchening is a daraisa. So says the Mishnah Berurah, certainly by duchening, shalo ya'arichu oz hakol ba'miras hatachanunim be'ez berchas kaihanim. He says we should be very careful that the tzibur should not take too long to say the tefillos in middle of Birchas Kaihanim. Why? Because while you're saying Rabbeinu Shalom, or while you're saying the last Yiratzin, which is quite lengthy, nowadays all of the Kaihanim, while we say the Rabbeinu Shalom or the Yiratzin, they're singing. Right? You ever wonder why? Why? Why do the Kaihanim sing? Why don't they just wait for us? This is the answer, Rabbi say. The reason the Kaihanim sing is because their singing is considered that they are still davening. So they're not making a hefsek. If they would just stand there b'shtika, then it's a hefsek. And now, depending on how long the tzibur takes to say the tefillah, it could be a hefsek kidei ligmar kula. And it could be a significant hefsek. It could get them into trouble. So says the Mishnah Berurah, says the Chavetz Chaim, we should be careful how long we take to say the Tachanunim. The Chavetz Chaim says it would be good to be noeg like the Gra. The Chavetz Chaim suggests all three breaks by Birchas Kahanim, we should say the Rabbeinu Shalom paragraph, and we should not say the long Yehiratzon at the last one, lest we take too long and make the Kahanim have a hefsek. Because sometimes, in some places, the Kahanim don't sing. And they just stand there and wait. And they get into trouble. We don't have this problem generally because the Kahanim sing. But if the reason you're having a pause in your Krias Shema or in your Birchas Krias Shema is because in the places where you are allowed to, let's say Ben Aprakim, you're answering to Kedusha, Kaddish, 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 Baruch V'Hashem Kaimai, Amen Yesh Be'Rabba, Mutter Lishay Safilu Kedei Ligmar Eskula, you would be allowed to take even as much time as Kedei Ligmar Eskula. I don't know how it would take Kedei Ligmar Eskula to say Kaddish, 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 Hashem Tzvaka, Yismalai Kol Eretz Kvaydai, but whatever. Umashba b'sefer Shulchan Shloimei, the dafke imhu oimed b'seif Birchas Emes v'Yatziv, Dahainu Eitzel Shira Chadasha Ukidl Kaman B'Seif Siman Samach Vav. Avalim Adayin Lo Yigil L'Shira Chadasha Tov Yoser Sheyishe B'Seirugin B'Emtza Bracha Kama Pamim Pachas B'Kidei Ligmar Kula. I am unsure what the Mishnah Berurah means from the word Umashma B'Sefer Shulchan Shloimei until the end over here. We're trying to decipher this. That something that he just said only applies if you're at the end of Emes V'Yatziv, you're all the way up to Shira Chadasha. It sounds like over there, you can have a long pause to say Kadosh, 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 or to answer to Kaddish. But if you're not up to there yet, better that you should make sure that you only have short pauses. I'm unsure what this means. Ois Katan Hey, Chayzer L'Rosh. So again, according to this sheet of the Ramah, if you have an oinus, if you have a hefsek machmas oinus, and it's a long hefsek kedei ligmar skula, you have to be chayzer l'rosh. What does it mean that you have to be chayzer l'rosh? Says the Chavetz Chaim, Hainu, and now we really get to define the halachah l'maisa over here. Hainu, im hifsek b'Kriyas Shema, if you're mafsik in middle of Krias Shema, afilu im hafsik hayarak kedei ligmar haKriyas Shema. So let's imagine this. Somebody started saying Krias Shema. He's holding in the middle of the second parasha of Krias Shema. He's holding in the middle of a Hayom Shemaya. Right? He's up to Hishamru lachem pen yiftal avavachem. He has to go to the Beis HaKisei. So he goes out to the Beis HaKisei. So he's being mafsik in the middle of Krias Shema. It's a hefsik machmas oinus. He needs to use the facilities. That's considered a hefsik machmas oinus even according to the Magen Avram. He's not roy to say Krias Shema because he needs the facilities. So he's being mafsik in the middle of Krias Shema, a hefsik machmas oinus, right? And now he takes Kedei Ligmar is Kula. What do we mean Kedei Ligmar is Kula? Kedei Ligmar what? The amount of time it takes to say what? Says the Chavetz Chaim, Hainu im hifsik b'Kriyas Shema, afilu im hifsik hayarak kedei ligmar haKriyas Shema. So like I said, my Kriyas Shema takes 3 minutes. So let's say your Kriyas Shema takes 2 minutes. Okay? So you went out to the Beis HaKisei, in middle of a Hayom Shemaya, you went out to the Beis HaKisei for longer than 2 minutes. So that's kedei ligmar it's kula. That's longer than the amount of time it would take for you to recite what? The entire Krias Shema, from Shema to Emes. Not the entire Birchas Krias Shema. You are mafsik in Krias Shema, kedei ligmar is kula means the amount of time it would take you to recite the entire Krias Shema. What's the halacha? Chayzer l'rosh Krias Shema. You got to go back to Shema Yisrael. You got to go back to the beginning of Krias Shema. So paskins, the Mishnah Berurah. This could be very negei halachah l'maisa. Somebody realizes in the middle of Krias Shema he has to go to the Beis HaKisei. If he can't hold himself back in 72 minutes for sure, he's got to go. He's not allowed to say Krias Shema. He's got to go to the Beis HaKisei. It's very easy to imagine that it's going to take 2 minutes, 3 minutes. You come back, you got to go back to the beginning of Krias Shema. So says the Mishnah Berurah. That's if you're mafsik in middle of Krias Shema. Ube Birchas Krias Shema. Let's say you're mafsik in Birchas Krias Shema. You're up to Lekel Baruch Ni'imais Yiteinu, you got to go to the Beis HaKisei. Lo yachzor l'roish habracha shepasak b'seicha. You don't have to go back to the beginning of the bracha. Eli im kein shah kidei ligmar mitchilas Birchas Yotzer Or ad Gal Yisrael. So here, if you're being mafsik in the middle of Birchas Krias Shema, you go out to the Beis HaKisei by Lekel Baruch Ni'imais Yiteinu. Now, kidei ligmar is kula, means kidei ligmar the entire Birchas Krias Shema with Krias Shema. So that's the amount of time it takes to say from Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Yotzer Or V'Choshen until Baruch Atah Hashem Gal Yisrael. V'ayin b'bir halacha, and he says, take a look at the bir halacha, the biyardu where we explain. The hifsik b'Birchas Krias Shema ben bracha lebracha. Let's say you went out to the Beis HaKisei, you said Baruch Atah Hashem Yotzer HaMa'oros. So you finished the first bracha, and you did not yet start the second bracha. And now you went to the Beis HaKisei. Then, B'chol Gavni Ein Tzarich Lachzor Levarach B'diavad. Then you don't have to go back, because you're Bein Aprokim, you're between the brachas. So you're not really being mafsik. You finished the first bracha, you did not yet start the second bracha. Avol b'Kriyas Shema, but a hefsik in Kriyas Shema, im hefsik bein parsha leparsha makmas oines. If you made a hefsik, let's say, between the end of the Ahavta, b'chol she'arecha, and v'haya im shamaya, so you made a hefsik between the parshas of Kriyas Shema, v'shaba k'dei ligmar kol haparshias, and it was long enough that you could have recited the entire Kriyas Shema, for me 3 minutes, chayzel arosh, you got to go back to Shema Yisrael. So paskins the Mishnah Berurah. Paisik told me today that we're not noyeg this way. I don't know why we wouldn't be noyeg this way. The Ramah says v'hachi nog. We usually paskin like the Ramah. The Mishnah Berurah paskins this way. Aruch HaShulchan paskins this way. So I don't yet have an answer. I put out some feelers. I don't yet have an answer why we wouldn't paskin this way. It seems to me that we should paskin this way. Ois katan vav v'hachi nog v'chein pasku ha'achreinim. Says the Chavetz Chaim, this is the way the Achreinim paskin. V'hu adin b'tfila v'haul v'megillah Birchas Kahanim. K'may shebayarnu b'bir halacha ayin sham. So the Mishnah Berurah definitely paskins this way. Ois katan zayin l'fi ha'koirei. We measure the length of time of Kidei Ligmar Skula by the individual reader. Bein lahakal, bein lahachmir. We do that l'kula if he says a very long Krias Shema, so then Kidei Ligmar Skula is very long. And it would take a very long hefsek to make you repeat. If he's one of these, Pony Express daveners, so he rattles off Krias Shema in 45 seconds, so then Kidei Ligmar Skula is 45 seconds. Okay. Very nice, beautiful. I'm happy. We also basically covered 2 pages, come on, because we really did almost all the Mishnah Berurah here on Tzadik Tes Amud Aleph. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. This list of limud HaTorah should be banging against Klal Yisrael. The Baruch should send Yeshua Sefor's Parnasa Shetuchim to all those in need. We should be zeicher to see the Bias Gal Tzedek. B'mehera v'yameinu. Amen. Be well.